This video is part one of a two-part video conversation talking about how and why it is so difficult for Afro-Americans, those who were taken from Africa, brought to the Americas, to return back to their native environment, back to Africa, back to the culture that they were stripped out of. We're going to talk about this in two parts. Today's first part is based off of a conversation that I had over the last week. It's a conversation from a conversation from a conversation about how the domestication, the enslavement of pets is exactly the same as the domestication, the enslavement of the African to the Americas. And why, when trying to release the pet or the circus animal or the zoo animal into the wilderness, into their natural habitat, why it is so difficult, and that same correlation to the African American going back to Africa. Stay with me. It's a great discussion. So what's up, everybody? How you doing? This is your Coach Renz, and I first want to thank everybody for joining me on this discussion. If you're finding this channel for the first time, not only do we talk about political and financial and economic things, but we also discuss relationships and spiritual things as far as alchemy and manifestation and the hermetics. So we go to 360 degrees of life of a person. So please hit that subscribe button if you're finding me on YouTube. If you're not finding me on YouTube, go over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and hit that bell icon so you'll get notified for any time we're doing live shows. Part two of this discussion will be tonight at 9 p.m. If you're watching this on April 23rd, the live will go tonight, and we'll do part two live, which in part two we will discuss how why faith and hope does not work without having substantial reality backing it up. That's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to learn how we can change that, what you need to do and what understanding you have to have in order to change it. So join me tonight for that one. So let's have a short discussion right now of part one. The enslavement of animals is the exact same as the enslavement of people. Now, I know some people say having a pet is not slavery. Now, when we look at animals who are in zoos, animals in circus, we may say that is enslavement. But let's break down how having a pet and slavery are the same. So, having a pet means that you're taking an animal out of its natural environment, its natural habitat, its natural conditions, out of its natural culture, and bringing it into your home or into your zoo or into your circus and making it conform to your habitat, to your culture, to your environment for nothing more than the pleasure or the money-making ability of the human, of the person, of the owner, of the colonist, of whatever you want to call them. So when you take a cat, a big cat, a lion, and many of these rich people have brought lions into their home. They put them in small cages. These lions don't grow up in the Serengeti. They don't run across the grass. They don't learn how to hunt. And for generations, they lived in zoos and they've lived in circuses. And they've been taught how to stand and walk and run. The circus animal is taught how to perform for the enjoyment of the crowd and money making of the people. The zoo animal is fed, and it doesn't hunt, it's fed by the humans. Whatever the humans give them, it's given medicine and treatment by whatever the humans. It runs around in a small enclosure that is like 1/1,000,000th of the size of the environment, the natural environment for a lion or a tiger or a gorilla or an elephant. It's in this small enclosure. It doesn't have the ability to run and chase and hunt. It doesn't know how to create their pride and defend the pride, and the pride lion defends the territory. It doesn't go through those things. It doesn't deal with rogue lions, and it doesn't become rogue itself. So it doesn't go through the natural course of life. Even your pets, your dogs and your cats, they don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to fend for themselves. They go to the bowl where they expect you to put water and put food in it. They curl up in the house. They see a mouse, yeah, they may kill it, but they don't know what to do with it. I've had many people who own cats tell me their cat go out, they catch a mouse out in the yard, or one gets into the house somehow in the garage. They capture it, they kill it, but then they don't know what to do with it. They just bring it to the owner and say, here you go. I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do with it. There was something instinctive in me that said to kill it, that I'm supposed to get it, but I don't know what to do with it after, because I know food comes from that bowl. When you pour the little thing and I hear the that comes from there. That's what I know. I know that the water drip, drip, drip down. Even your pet fish are swimming around in a tank. Like they say, a shark will only grow as large as the tank that it's in. But a fish grows up in a tank, not its natural environment, not the natural fresh water or ocean water, not the natural coral reefs and things like that. No, the falsified ones that you put in the tank. And it swims around in a circle, going in back and forth. It doesn't know how to migrate, how to live, how to spawn their young and dangers of other animals, and they don't understand that. They never do. They don't. Now, of course, some animals adjust easier, like birds can adjust better. But for the most part, we're talking about land animals, gorillas, tigers, elephants. And I went in my research for this, I spent the week studying a lot of rescue animals and how their response is. So that is what their response is. And we're going to get more into that. But that is how these things happen. That's what's happened. This is the status. Humans, Africans, taken out of their natural environment, stolen, purchased, whatever method it occurred, out of their natural environment in Africa, out of their tribes, away from their families, sailed across the seas to the Americas. 13 million. 400,000 plus going to North America, the rest going into South America and the Caribbean. Going into these lands, convinced and, not convinced, but forced to change themselves into the Anglo-Saxon culture. If you think about the North American continent, everything was of the Anglo-Saxon culture. The difference, and when they got here, they were beaten. They were stripped of their heritage. They were forced to dress like the colonists, to walk like the colonists, to speak like the colonists. No more of your language. You will speak our language. We will speak American, what was becoming American English. Right? They cooked, for the most part, as the colonists wanted them to cook. Yeah, they add a little bit of something of their own, but for the most part, you cook like they cook. You farm like they farm. You live like they live. You build enclosures like they build them. Matter of fact, you stay in your enclosure. You have your small little shanty hut town houses over here on this side of the plantation, or you have your room that you just live in if you was in a situation where it was not a big plantation, but you were like the only slave of one slave-owning family. Which was more common, that most slaves lived in a situation where it was only like 3 or 4 slaves to a farm, not a full-size plantation. But still, they were regulated into their small enclosure. They had to strip themselves of their native religion and learn and be forced into the religion of their slave master, which was for predominantly Christian on this side of the planet at the time frame. They were stripped of all of that and forced to be like their master, but of course never equal to their master. In the same way the cat, the dog, is forced to live in the environment of their master, to wear sweaters. You're a dog, you have fur, but you got to wear sweaters. You're an Alaskan Malamute who's supposed to be up in the cold, but now they got you down in South Florida and your tongue's always out because it's too damn hot for you. It's not in your natural environment. The polar bear, they try to make the environment in the zoo fit you, but it's air conditioned, it's falsified air. You don't know how to hunt. They throw you fish all the time. You lose all that makes you and conform over to them. This is what happened to the African coming to the Americas, whether it was the Anglo-Saxon North America or the Spanish conquistador Central South American or the Portuguese. It didn't matter. You conform to that one. Now, some people at this point would say, well, what about the Irish and the Scottish and the Germans and everybody else who came to America? But see, they decided to come. And those who came in indentured servitude came with a 7-year debt and then were released from it. But they decided to come. They came over with their German culture that later got infused into American culture. They came with their French culture that got infused into American culture. All these things came over, but they kept their name. Now, I know a lot of the Italians, they came over. The Anglo-Saxons couldn't pronounce their name, so they butchered their name. And so the Italian name may have been different, but it's still more Italian than Anglo-Saxon. My last name is Reed, a straight-up Anglo-Saxon name. It is not a butchered African name, but a straight-up Anglo-Saxon name. You know, if your name was Saladano, then you get to America, your name was still, it might not have been Saladano, it may become Sadano because they couldn't say it all right, but it's still more of an Italian type name. So it's different because they came by choice. They weren't being owned as slaves for the entirety of their lives. Their children weren't born into slavery and maintain that slavery. If they came over Protestant, they got to remain Protestant. If they came over Greek Orthodox, they got to remain Greek Orthodox. If they came over Jewish, they got to remain Jewish. They didn't have to convert over. But the black enslavement, they had to convert over. So just as an animal in a zoo, domesticated, had to convert over to the lifestyle, the religion, the culture of the owner of the zoo, of the circus. Now, what makes it so difficult? In watching some of these videos and reading some of the articles and the papers and written by veterinarians and these people who work with the animals who really actually know what they're talking about, I'm watching them, and one in particular stuck out to me. It was a video about Lions Rock, this rescue organization, this rescue situation down in Africa, where the lions have a difficult time, very distressful time, stepping out onto grass for the first time, touching the land for the first time, smelling that air for the first time. They are in distress when they first get there. They have a hard time. This is unfamiliar to them. They have no idea. These were lions that were held captives in these zoos in Romania who've been living on concrete slabs. This is the first time they've touched grass, touched the land. And they were distressed about this. One lion cub, looked like he was maybe a year or two old, didn't even want to touch the land, stayed in the cage the entire time of the video. I'm sure at some point it came out of the cage, but for the time of the video stayed in the cage and wouldn't even leave. You know, the parents were bewildered, didn't know what to do with themselves. You know, kind of like in a strange land. Much the same way if an American went to Botswana or Rwanda or, you know, Benin or Nigeria, Ghana, the Gambia, the Togo, they will be in a strange land. You will touch the ground, you may be exuberant, but then it's culture shock. I've never seen markets like this that look like this. I've never seen towns that look like this. I never, you know, seen how they move, how the people's movements are, the government's movements are. So it's a little bewildering and challenging at first. And that challenge goes even further. Now, one of the things that I hated, but I recognize, and I see the similarity, is that the lions that are brought over are kept in an enclosure. Although they have been brought back to Africa, although they now have a few miles of territory that they can roam around, they're in an enclosure, and it wasn't a few miles actually, but they're in this enclosure. They're still in a cage. It's just a big ass cage, right? It's a big fenced in enclosure, right? Why do they do that? I kept asking, why do they do that? I kept researching, well, why? And what I found, I didn't find a lot of information on it, but what I did find is that these lions don't know how to hunt. That if they were just released out into the Serengeti with all the other lions and all the water buffalo and all, they would trail off so far that they would die because they don't know how to hunt. That they're in the enclosure and they still have to be fed by the people at the enclosure. Now, they didn't talk about how, one article did talk about how they try to give the animals, the lions, like, you know, some dead full carcasses instead of just pounds of meat. Get them used to tearing meat away from an animal. But teaching them how to hunt still remains the most difficult thing for them to do. And teaching them how to protect the pride, how to roam the land, how to follow the water, the food, the prey, is a difficult thing that, you know, they hope that the children of the cubs learn, but they're learning from their parents. And so what are they learning? Nothing. So they're still in this enclosure. They're still a cage. This one video showing gorillas, that this man brought these gorillas and he had them on an island at first, but he knew that them going across the bridge into the wilderness, that they would face dangers, that other male gorillas would try to challenge him for his females, that the gorillas didn't know how to forage, that the gorillas didn't know what plants they can eat and what plants they couldn't eat. You see, they've been away from their home. They never understood that, so they didn't know what plants they could eat, what plants they couldn't eat. So they were fearful of the dangers that they would incur. I seen a human example of this when I lived in Germany. As a Marine, I was stationed in Germany, and many of the American soldiers, especially the black American soldiers, were so fearful of Germany that they would rarely go out into, we just say go out into town or go out into, to the civilians. But they would rarely go out, they would stay on base. They would do as much as they can on base. You see, even though the base may have been, pretty decent size, they stayed in their enclosure of the base because it was safe for them. They didn't know how to function. Like, I learned a little bit of German just enough to get by so that I can go shop in German stores, enjoy German events in Germany. I would go to the movies at the German theaters and have to read the subtitles, but I engaged the community, right? I traveled around, like they would travel as tourists, but then I would go to where the non-tourists are going. So, but I watched other people not do that. I was very embarrassed one time. I was in Augsburg, Germany. I went to a KFC outside of the base. It wasn't on base. And I watched this black lady in front of me who was obviously an American who was stationed at the base in Augsburg. And I watched her start yelling and screaming at the employees of this KFC that's not on base about the fact that they don't speak English. She was saying, this is a KFC, and y'all should be speaking English in this KFC. And I was like, ma'am, after a while, I was like, ma'am, why are you yelling at them for not speaking English at a KFC that's out in a German city, not on base? If they were on base, yes, because it's an American military base. But they're out in the civilian territory. I said, you do realize that KFC don't just have businesses in America or on bases. They have it in Germany, all throughout Germany. We can go to Stuttgart. There's another KFC. We can go to Heidelberg. Now, Heidelberg had one too, I believe. So we can go to these different cities. So I was trying to explain to her that you're out in Germany. They are going to speak German. Notice the menu is all in German. There's no English on that menu, right? You're picking a picture. So I watched humans, these Americans, stay in their enclosure on base. So many times when you go to other countries, you will have these areas where the expats live, where you go to Dubai and you'll see like all the Indian people live here and all the Americans live over here. And Abu Dhabi is tons of that. A lot of Americans who go over there to teach school, they all live on these same little compounds, same area. You see that here. You see that in your cities where it's like we have the Chinatowns and all the Koreans live here and all the Spanish live there. But they venture out. But we have a thing where we gravitate. So I'm sure that since Ghana has been bringing a lot of black Americans to move to Ghana, that there are areas where a lot of black Americans are gravitating together. But at least they've moved. At least they've moved. We have to, so I recognize the enclosure mentality. But what is even worse, what is even worse is the fact that many black Americans feel like, what's in Africa for me? I don't have anything in Africa. Matter of fact, some of y'all are even like, my ancestry doesn't come from Africa. 400,000 slaves on cargo manifests for business and tax purposes are shipped from Africa to North America. At the end, for 300 years, they were here and had babies. And at the end of the Civil War, there were only 2 million black people, Africans, in America. Yes, you can have, over a 300-year period, a population of 400,000 become 2 million. Easy. If there wasn't so much death of disease and beating and just murdering and pregnancy and postpartum mortality, it probably would have been more than 2 million black people in America after that. So for those of you who say they could not have shipped that many, the 400,000 that came to America is plenty enough. And the 13 million that went elsewhere, the 12 point something million that went elsewhere, is plenty enough people for a 300-year period to generate the numbers that are over here today. Just as the 2 million have made 27 to 30 million today. So the problem is the colonization, the domestication that happened in America. I spoke to a young man earlier, And he was saying, what is there in Africa? Look at all the corruption. And I said, well, look at the corruption in America. The big banks got bailed out, but the banks on Main Street didn't. The big companies got bailed out, but the little companies on Main Street didn't. The reason why the big companies are paying bribes called lobbyists to the government that got them bailed out, where yes, in certain countries in Africa, government officials have been bribed by those with finances in order to help those who don't have finances. Help those who got those finances to increase their finances. Same corruption. One is just directly in your face and legal as hell with lobbyists, where the other one is straight up illegal, even for their own country. So it is what it is. It's still corruption no matter how you do it. But I had to point out, countries like Botswana have had great economies and great government for the last 50 years. So there is less corruption there than here. You have Rwanda. President Kagame has done an amazing job rehabilitating that country and making it one of the most fastest growing economies in Africa over the last, ever since the Hutu and Tutsi civil war occurred. So you need to understand more. But his mind is so domesticated, like a pet in America, that he can't see beyond the borders of America. America's done a great PR job of land of the free, home of the brave. They've done an amazing job of marketing. This is why immigrants come here all the time. But after I talked to him, I talked to a gentleman from Togo. And he was like, he's here in America, but he got business over there. He came and got America's education, but he built business in Togo. And he goes back every 6 months to keep checking on his business and building more business in Togo. He's taking what he can from America and building that business in Togo and getting ready for his retirement. I know a gentleman who, Nigerian, I believe. Yeah, he's Nigerian. And worked for America, worked for Georgia Department of Transportation, and has been building his houses and whatnot in Nigeria, pushing his money back to Nigeria. This young man could not see that. He can't get past that. He can't get past the propaganda of the domestication of America has put on the minds of the African in America. Even the support of the idea that we are native indigenous people to America is part of that propaganda, because you can claim indigenous, but you're never going to get this land back. You're not going to get the casino land. And even if you did, look at those people. Do the Native Americans, they have a minor amount of their culture. Due respect to one of my mentors who passed away, but he's in the direct line of Coaches. Go look up Coaches. And the thing about it, he was such a Christian, and he tried to balance his Christianity and his Apache heritage. But his Apache heritage had been co-opted by the colonists, by being the servants of the Anglo-Saxon culture, by being absorbed into it and losing 90% of it. Yeah, you'll see a war dance, a teepee here or there, but then they put their suit on and they go and run their casino. Yeah, I got a coat on, but the thing about it is, where's the mindset? You see, my mindset is not in America. My mindset's over there. My mindset is on building here and taking what I have here and building over there, funneling money from here to there, and not just because, like how John Templeton, he moved to the Bahamas because he avoided American taxation and then built and put that money in the Bahamas. His was for tax reasons. Mine is for cultural reasons. Mine is for the benefit reason. Although, if you get pulled over by a police officer in America as a black man or woman, there is a 99% chance that it's just writing a ticket and you go on about your way. But it's that 1% chance, that the incident occurs simply because you are black. Because you're black. Now, put that over in a country like Nigeria or Abuja in Ivory Coast or the Gambia or Senegal, and you get pulled over. There is no tension because you're black. Now, you doing something crazy, you talking crazy, you got something illegal in the car, you were speeding, super speeder, there's tension because of the activity that you created, the action that was going on, but not because you showed up black. In America, the initial tension is you were pulled over black, driving while black. That's the initial tension. And that's 100% of the time that you're pulled over, that anxiety jumps up in you. Because there is a 1% chance that you got the right cop with the wrong attitude. But at least over there, I know the cop's not going to be already in a state of agitation because of American stereotypes and propaganda and racism. I know that. to be true. I know that when I walk into a job, and especially when I was an IT guy in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I walked into an interview, as soon as they saw a black man, there was no prejudgment or anything like that. That if I went to Africa and I was still an IT guy, that there wouldn't be that prejudgment. It wouldn't be that, oh, he's black, he doesn't know about IT. He's black, how can he have all these certifications? He's black, how can he have this degree? It wouldn't be that. It would be, he has this degree, he has these certifications. Now, do I like him to fit on my team? I know he can do the job based on his resume, but what do I want him to be part of my team? Is the question. Not, oh, he's black. He can't be that smart. How long he's really been in IT? Is his resume real? Is it fake? Because he's black. And then it's, okay, he may be a good member on my team, or he may not be a good member. That tension is not there. That tension is not there. My kid will go to my last one's graduating. So, woohoo, yay, Lincoln graduating. But it wouldn't be the question of, is this school a good school or bad school simply because I'm black? Or is it a good school, bad school just simply because of the faculty, what they're teaching, the environment of the school? You know, we eliminate those tensions, those problems by going back. But that slave mindset, that domesticated mindset into the Anglo-Saxon American culture prevents you from being able to do that. It prevents you. So the way to get out of that is to, one, do research and study and realize what's really going on in Africa. Research what's really happening in Rwanda. Research the East African Federation they're working on forming. Research what's happening there, the infrastructure, what's going on. Research Botswana, research the Gambia, research Ghana, research these countries. Listen to their news. Stop listening to Western news. Listen to, their local news, as well as Algiers is better than CNN. They're going to give you more information than CNN. Listen to them. Talk to their people. Talk to people who still got family over there. Learn. And here's the biggest one. Go visit. It's going to be disorienting. It's different than what you're used to. But you have to go. Go and visit. Go put your feet on the ground. Touch the land. Go visit the people. Visit the culture. And if you have to go back and forth for the next 7 to 10 years before you're ready to make that move, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Get to know it truly for yourself. And stop just taking the American propaganda that is anti-African, while at the same time they're going over to do tons of business in Africa. You have to understand that logic. But that domestication has you. It has you. It has you thinking that there's no other place better than this. Where can we get better housing than this? I know I'm copying Malcolm's speech. Where can we get better food than this? We can't get nothing better than this. I'm staying in America. I ain't leave nothing in Africa. Well, you left your mind in Africa. I love that line. But that is truth. You left your mind in Africa. It's still there, though. Unlike these animals that are forced to live in in the enclosure, unlike the ones that can't go out and hunt, that can't learn how to go hunt, the difference between the lion and the gorilla, the elephant, and humans is that we are more like the birds, more like the elephants actually do learn, go out and regain their ability to forage and whatnot. The gorillas do as well. The big cats are the ones that struggle the most because they have to hunt, and that is such a strange thing. But we as humans can go and learn how to do business in Africa. We can learn how to acclimate ourselves to the culture. I was watching a woman she went to Bahia, Brazil, right? Very incredibly Afrocentric, still got their African culture. She went to Bahia, Brazil, and she said, yes, the standard of living is different. She lived in a townhouse in D.C., but now she's living in the favelas, and it's different. The amount of amenities different. So things are different, but she adjusted. She'd rather have that peace of mind and that peacefulness and that connection to her African heritage than not have it. It's different, but she adjusted. You become acquainted with it. It becomes part of who you are. You get used to the different fruits and flowers. You see, unlike the gorillas who don't know which plant's going to kill them or not, it's easy. Pick up a book. You can learn the different herbs and plants and foods that you can eat, what goes in it, what's not in it. You can learn about the different medicines, things you can learn. And if you are medical, go there and bring that knowledge there. Bring that information there. Bring your abilities there. Be like LeBron. I decided that I'm taking my talents to Botswana. I decided I'm taking my talents to Rwanda. Do that. Do that. Pick up your talent and go. Pick up your talent and go. And it doesn't take as much money for you to live over there that it does here. Your skill set and with the internet is, you could be importing, exporting. You can do. There's so many different avenues and approaches and opportunities for you. I was talking to a young man who his family is from Ghana, but he was born here, and we discussed how he can, you do have to know who you can trust. You got to make those visits, deal with those people. So, but you can be exporting jeans and clothing from America, diapers and things like that. Because I know a guy, he export diapers from America to there. He buys them for pennies on the dollar for brands that they're, versions of a brand they're not using anymore, and he ships them back to Nigeria. So you could do that. But it's just a learning process. The SBA have programs that they'll teach you how to get an exporting license, importing exporting license. You can get lawyers. The information is there for you. Unlike other animals, you can go and learn. The problem is we've been domesticated so much to believe in the fallacy of Africa being this place that you want to stay away from, that you detest. Even people who were talking about the animals were saying that, it was bad taking them out of Africa, but it's even worse returning them. And now they can't hunt. What are you talking about? They're returning to, at least they're not living in a 6x6 cage. Now they can run around a little bit. Now at least they got some dirt under their feet. Now they're in the air and environment again. And maybe a few generations later, they can learn how to hunt and live truly as lions. So maybe you go there now, and maybe you're unfamiliar, and you don't, and you gain some level of comfort and wealth, and you build there, but maybe you don't become super rich, but you get comfortable and you know the culture. But then, and you struggle with the language, you struggle with these things, but then your child code grows up and they don't struggle as much with the language. And then their children are born there, and their children are born into the environment, into the language, and they are African. Your grandkids are African. They know it. It's just who they are. They have the African mind. Right? And then the next generation even more so. And before you know it, you've created a lineage of people who have escaped being pets. And now they are home. They are home. Because remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Watch these other videos and join me tonight, 9 o'clock.